Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate you raising the issue of Guam. I think it's an important one with what we need to do with the markup. I wanted to ask each of you, and I raised it in my opening statement, we know that defense sequestration is coming in January if the Congress doesn't fail to act to come up with other responsible budget savings. And I am a strong advocate for us doing that. We've heard from each of the services, as well as from our Secretary of Defense, the devastating impact of defense sequestration, including hollowing out our forces, along with all the other consequences. But what I'd like each of you to address for me is timing, because I'm worried that there's a general feeling around here that we can kick this can until December to make the decision on how to avoid defense sequestration and undermining our national security. I met with a group of our defense industrial base the other day, and they pointed out to me there are things that they are going to be required to do, for example, issue layoff notices under the WARN Act and other legal requirements that they will have to undertake. Can you help me, each of you, if we wait till December, what are the disadvantages and consequences of doing that as opposed to resolving this issue much sooner, particularly for each of our service branches? Because I think this timing issue is very important for people around here to understand.
I agree with your assessment, Senator, that if this does come to pass, it would be devastating. And because of that, I think it would drive us to go back and redo some of our planning, certainly make new assessments. That takes time. That certainly consumes a lot of organizational energy, so we are a bit concerned about that. And I think from an Army perspective, you know, as you, again, we've not done any planning on this, as you know, as you indicated, but the back of the envelope calculations are such that this would probably mean a loss of probably another 100,000 troops, 50% of those in the Guard and Reserve. And with those kinds of impacts, that probably would drive us to go back and relook our planning efforts here.
So, General, that would be in addition to the 72,000 that we're looking in terms of end strength reductions?
Right.
Another 100,000?
Right.
Thank you. And would that not take time? And obviously, thinking about this concept of, well, first of all, if we're going to reduce our forces another 100,000, how do we not break the faith there? I mean, I don't know how you could possibly not break faith, but even the implementation of something so devastating. So wouldn't it be more productive if we could tell you sooner that we've resolved this for you? Isn't there an urgency? I mean, that's what I need. I mean, I think that's what we need to appreciate around here. Would you agree with me that there's some urgency that you not have this hanging over your head?
Absolutely. If we didn't have that sword of Damocles hanging over our head, we would be in much better shape.
Thank you. Admiral?
Senator, I think there's two significant impacts. If you look at sequestration, the impact on the Navy from the $600 billion defense reduction would be about $15 billion a year. That's the amount of the entire ship construction account that we would have to figure out how to spread in our budget and reduce. Waiting till December and then not having a resolution at that point would allow a very short cycle for planning. It will not allow us to make efficient or effective choices. It would also cause us to go back and relook at the strategy, because the force that comes out of sequestration is not the force that can support the current strategy that we're operating under. The second concern would be the industrial base impacts that you alluded to. Our industrial shipyards and our providers and corporations have to start making some investment decisions with respect to notification of employees if there's furloughs, if we're forced to break contracts and not be able to execute them under a sequestration scenario. So I would indicate that the uncertainty in our industrial base would affect our suppliers, and then if it were to occur, would greatly affect our industrial base sustainment over the long term.
Admiral, if we lose some of those small employers, isn't the risk that they don't come back?
That risk certainly exists, and many of our more complex procurement programs. We're down to single vendors or single suppliers that we're their predominant customer. So it would be very difficult for some to recover.
Senator, I'd like to start just by going back to your opening comments and when you quoted President Reagan. I mean, we have a tendency to view sequestration as a budget issue, but it's really not a budget issue. It's a reordering of our national priorities. It's what we won't be able to do. And certainly at the strategic level, I think what the Secretary has said is we won't be able to implement the strategy as currently written if sequestration goes into effect. And I can tell you from a Marine Corps perspective, you know, we are at 182,000 right now. We're at the margin of being able to meet the strategy. In other words, we've balanced the risk. You know, I've talked to you in private that we believe that 182,000 Marines, with that number, we can meet the strategy that Secretary Panetta has articulated. But just like what General Austin mentioned, there's an automatic 10% personnel cut unless personnel is exempted. There's an automatic 10% personnel cut on the Marine Corps. That's another 18,000 right away if we were to be reduced. If we were to be cut another 18,000, we would not have adequate capabilities and capacities to meet a single major contingency operation. So that's fairly significant. And I think the other point that you raised that's absolutely true is we would absolutely not be able to keep faith with our people. If sequestration would go into effect, not only would we have to cut that additional 18,000 people if a flat 10% was executed, but we right now are only budgeted in FY13 for 182,000 Marines. We're relying on overseas contingency funds to have a ramp to take us from the 202,000 Marines we're authorized in 12 down to the 182,000 Marines that we're going to be at in FY16. If sequestration went into effect and we were not given the opportunity to have that ramp, that would be an immediate reduction from 202,000 to something, you know, on the order of 168,000. And at that number, there is absolutely no way we would keep faith with people. We'd be breaking contracts and sending people on their way who believe they had a commitment from us to keep on active duty. And these are the very people we talked about earlier who are in Afghanistan today, forward deployed, forward engaged, in harm's way. And their reward when they come home will simply be to dismiss them and shake their hand. I think that'd be a mistake.
Thank you, General.
Senator, just to reiterate a couple of things my compatriots have said. We think that we would definitely not be able to execute the existing strategy if we have to go through sequestration. We echo your remark that it would be devastating. We simply can't afford this one. As we've talked about several times, the Air Force is the oldest it's ever been in terms of its iron. We desperately need to recapitalize our flying fleet. And if we see sequestration, we will not be able to maintain capacity and do recapitalization of those fleets. So we'll have to take very tough decisions to either come way down in the number of units or to give up the modernization of those units. And I want to echo something also said. You know, on the industrial base, there are some very key capabilities out there that are already very much at risk. And in the aviation business, the number of houses that can do stealth have reduced. And another cut to the capability and the effort that we're putting into those stealth capabilities could cause us severe problems in those in that industrial base.
I thank all of you. I know that my time is up. Can you just give me a quick yes or no? Yes, is there an urgency that we do this before December? General?
Yes.
Admiral?
I affirm yes.
Yes, sir.
General?
Absolutely.
General, thank you.